told you earlier that we shall be looking at the financial policy of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, of course, following the recent increase in value-added tax from 5% to 7.5%, and of course the CBN new charges on both corporate and individual accounts. We shall be escalating this discussion and also ascertaining whether or not Nigerians are being overtaxed or undertaxed, and various ways for which there are multiple taxation in the country. And we shall be doing this with three analysts here seated in the studio. The president of the Taxpayers Association of Nigeria, Okafor Obinna Innocent. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining him is a research fellow of the Center for Study of Economies of Africa, Precious Chukwemelem Akanono. You're welcome to the studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
And of course, a political analyst, a regular face on this show, Adakole Ijoji. Always a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I think let's start with Okafor Obinna as the president of Taxpayers Association of Nigeria. When the president was presenting the 2020 budget, he said the proposal for increase in VAT from 5% to 7.5% will form part of the revenue, and even though this hasn't, the implementation hasn't started, Nigerians are already reacting. Now, what is the feeler? As the president of Taxpayers Association, what is the feeler like? What are people saying?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria. Let me start by saying it's quite unfortunate and despicable that government took the decision. We thought government would have rescinded their decision. When government came up with that proposal, it met stiff opposition. The reasons are very simple. It is ill-conceived. We as the stakeholders in this very particular matter, we try to make our positions very clear. When you try to weigh apple with apple, you will understand that government have not done the right thing in diverse ways. Tax is given and taken. When you pay your tax, it is left for government to work. When you stake your tax, you hold government accountable. And don't forget, 2007, the government of that regime thought of increasing VAT by 100%. And it met with stiff opposition. The stakeholders, as at that very time, we said, no, it will not fly. And that government decided to come back to themselves. And what we are now seeing is that all the sectors of the economy made very categorical statement as regards to the increment that government was planning to do. Because what government is planning to do now is to do 50% increment on VAT from 5% to 7.5%. And which we think it is not healthy. Why we think so is this. Today, there is very big problem in the manufacturing sector. There is very big problem with unemployment. And this is taxes that are levied on goods and services. So, advertently or inadvertently, it will have a ripple effect. People will bear the brunt. And we are thinking that our positions which we made to government is quite unfortunate that government have failed to wear human face in this matter. Our point that we made to government was that don't go further to think about making any increment in this particular matter. What you would have done is to go back to the drawing board. There are so many wastages. So many of these tax filter into people's private pocket. And when you're talking about VAT here, 15% only goes to federal government. Even though Mr. President is championing this cause. 50% goes to state. 35% goes to local government, which Nigerians know that there is still a problem with the local government structure in Nigeria. So, it is well known that almost 85% goes to the state. 85%. And you see, today it is well written in the dailies that even governors cannot even pay 30% minimum wage.
But Obinna,
and our problem is that if government can go back to the drawing board, lock up those loopholes that we're having, see how you can appoint the right people to manage tax revenue in this state, we will be able to realize a lot.
Now, Obinna,
you will be facing this kind of problem.
You just said that most governors cannot meet with their obligations, so that means that they definitely need money. But we'll come back to you. Adokole, do you share, the same thoughts, what he has raised? This ill-timed, not now at least. Not that you're not saying they shouldn't be incrementing tax, but not now. Or do you share that thought?
Well, I share some of. I agree with some of the points he made, but not all of it, because if you know my positions over the years, I've been taking a position of increased government revenues. With the structure of the Nigerian budget, the way it structures, recurrent against capital, it cannot engender any form of development. Government needs to generate more revenues. Now, if increases in things like in a consumption tax, that is what VAT is, and then when you do the comparison along even the West African coast, you will see that Nigerians pay the less, VAT. I'm running away from calling figures now because I always call figures, and people call me a mathematician. I say no.
You can quickly touch
on no. What we're saying is that the VAT in Nigeria, in sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria pays the lowest VAT in sub-Saharan Africa, and if you compare it with similar economies, even in Ghana or in Kenya or in Egypt, you find out that, and the misconceptions that Nigerians have about this VAT increment from 5% to 7.5%, I think it is largely because the government is not actually, the managers of this economy, they are not actually driving the narrative. Now we understand this chicken and egg thing of saying that they pay taxes, they don't see any form of development or return on investment or return on their taxes. At the same time, we still cry out that government is not doing anything. If you look at it, the president just even promised the release of how much? 600 billion before the end of the year for the budget. The capital side in this 2018-2019 budget, the releases has been less than 20%. How can you grow an economy without government revenues? So I think that the conversations to be having is, how do you generate revenues for government? One, I agree with him to an extent to say that we need to clean up our tax system, collection, coalition, accountability. We need to clean up that, especially what we call the economists call the tax mix. Now, if you look at World Bank figures and you juxtapose that with the figures from the NBS, employable Nigerians, about 111 million people. World Bank figures, working Nigerians is 65 million people. Look at NBS figures, people that actually paid tax in 2018 is 19 million Nigerians. All we're saying is that we don't pay tax. I understand that issue that I usually crack this joke to say government, it looks like a foreign body to the Nigerian citizen, because we look at it from that, they inherited the structure of the colonialists. Like in your local dialects, ask yourself, what do you call police? Is something derogatory. In Igbo is if you check what it means something to catch. Also in Hausa is Mesanda, the one who carries stick. In Idoma is Reka, you want to catch. In Ufia, so I'm saying that we need to see government as our own, as in government will work for us. If government wants to increase VAT to 25%, no problem. There's a legislation that will back that. It's not a fiat policy. We go to the National Assembly and we debate it. All I'm saying is, let's debate it. Government needs more revenue. Yes? How will government raise revenues? Nigerians, working Nigerians, whether you use the NBS figures or the World Bank figures of 65 million, you see, look, I give you this. Between 2015 and 2019, federal revenues have dropped by over 45%. Federal government revenues. Of course. And most of that has been wiped off by either inflation or bad policies. As you know, the country is just coming out of a recession. So I'm saying that we have working Nigerians. and they are not paying tax. And you now have this huge 67% of the Nigerian economy is in the informal sector, not covered by government taxes, regulation, and all of that. So we're saying that if we say don't increase VAT, and then what is VAT? VAT is consumption tax. If you look at the 2007 value-added tax law, you find out that there are some list of items that are non-taxable, that are exempted from tax, like baby products, like the food we eat, the regular food, the basic food we eat, gari, yam, rice, all those things produced locally, educational stuff, agricultural equipment. There's so much. Now, the one I want us to have, I say, if we are having a conversation and not fighting, we pay VAT on electricity. We need electricity. Yes, very key. Then the conversation will be now, let us take that electricity tariff and remove it and put it in the non-taxable items. So I say, let's have a conversation. Let's not fight about it, because government must generate more revenues. And we have made the case that you can see that Nigerians don't pay tax. If you look at even tax to GDP, you find that there are three, as an economist, there are three things we look at. You look at tax to GDP, you look at tax as a percentage of GDP, you look at tax as a percentage of revenue, and then you look at tax as a percentage of budget. You find out that tax to GDP, Nigeria, I'll give you the figures. In South Africa, tax to GDP is 29%. In Ghana, it's 15%. In Kenya, it's 13%. In OECDs, it's averaging 35%. In Nigeria, it's 3.4. It was 3.4% in 2007.
All right, before we go further into details, let's get Precious into this conversation. Are you also of the view that it's rather unfortunate that the federal government has stopped on increasing value-added tax, despite, you know, political and economic uncertainties?
Okay, not to sound like the devil's advocate, but government needs the revenues as much as it can get, because look at the budget. We're already running deficit in the 2019 budget, and the proposed 2020 budget we have deficits of over 2.1 trillion. And how would we fund that? The government can only fund through borrowing or through taxing or through like business-like ventures, and they just need to tax to be able to raise up this revenue to cater for the needs, provide public services. We know that debt servicing already is almost the second highest in the budget. It's already covering a lot of the budget, and we need more tax service. Like the second speaker mentioned, there's really low tax to GDP ratio compared to other countries, African countries, and we are quick to mention that. But the challenges that these businesses are already facing is what most people are concerned about, and how these revenues are used at the end of the day is what concerns most people. If there is more accountability and transparency in how these revenues are used, I think people would be more willing to pay up in the next season.
All right, when we talk about increase in VAT, you know, there's been this argument, and of course the federal government cleared the air some weeks or months ago, and it says that the additional VAT on the 5%, that is the 2.5% additional VAT, will be for, you know, revamping key sectors like the health, education, and also infrastructure. Is that not enough for the government to go ahead with increasing this VAT? Like you have earlier stated, you are disillusioned with the fact that the government would have to increase VAT, but you are more concerned with blocking of loopholes. But with this explanation, wouldn't that put your argument to rest?
Thank you very much. I beg to disagree in some of the information we're getting from government. As far as I am concerned, as the president of Taxpayers Association of Nigeria, I think it is very, very dishonorable or disastrous for any human being to go contrary to the act of his conscience. Part of our mandate is to build bridge between the taxpayers and the government. In fact, let me say this. The present FIRS, I must commend, is doing a very good job. under the able leadership of Mr. Fowler, is a good friend. And I must say, he understands the working of tax revenue. And within his regime, it is well understandable that he has also brought in a lot of new engine into the system, and they are doing a very good job. And he has been able to employ a lot of digital Nigerians that can do that job. But that is not the problem. In as much as we want to see how we can bring the taxpayers and the government together, okay, so that there will be trust. The biggest challenge in this matter is there is no trust. Nigeria, as at today, our population is over 200 million, 202 million according to World Bank report. And we are half of West Africa country. And when you look at it, and you can also consider the level of unemployed youth in the country, is a very big danger. It poses a lot of danger. If you now match it up with the level of leakages that we still encounter in the system, is a very big problem. Now, from 1999 up to 2019. From 1999 to 2019, I want to let Nigerians know this. The value of abandoned projects in Nigeria is valued over 10 trillion naira. Nationwide. You're a journalist. You see people, government just embark into a very big project. All of a sudden, they just allow it to
Where did you get your facts from?
No. We have very good data base in our organization. So we run a lot of data. We go out there, we do a lot of research.
Is the data open to the public?
Anyway, that will be for another day, because it is for our personal use.
What can be attributed that, you know, what you have said?
Yes, we will do that. We will upload it for the public to see what we're doing. The reasons are very, very simple. If government actually want to do this, we would love to collaborate with government. Nobody will say it is wrong to do a lot of tax revenue generation. But don't forget, there is also need for greater transparency. If there is transparency and inclusiveness from the side, because the problem we have is that the people that we see as the managers of the economy are, in fact, they find it very difficult to entertain questions. You don't ask them questions. And Nigerians want to bring this arrangement to the doorstep of our stakeholders. Let them understand that power belongs to the people. Now let me give you a simple instance of what happens within our environment. Some estates in Abuja, for example, people contribute to buy transformer. Some estates in Abuja, people contribute money to construct the roads. But in this part of the country, and don't forget, in those estates and all those places, if somebody is being given the primary assignment to do those road construction, you see some persons come out to ask questions. If the road is going on, somebody will say, but this quality is not what we bargained for.
So you're about transparency.
So we're talking about transparency. Somebody should account for these monies that are in private pocket. Many of these tax revenue in states is based on favoritism. You just wake up, you give your brother consultancy job to go and start collecting tax. And when he collects, he pockets them. Go to states. We know what we are facing in so many states. And when you confront some of these governors, some of them are strong emperors. You understand what I mean? Some of them are loose cannon. And it's very, very terrible. You just wake up and you empower your brother, you empower your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, your girlfriend to become a tax revenue collector.
All right, Obi, now let's
a problem.
Okay, let's move this further. Now, Precious, the issue of tax increment, like he said during his opening remarks, he's of the view that it could affect manufacturing. Now, if we go ahead, because the policy, what you call it, the proposal or the proposed increase hasn't started. Now, if we go ahead with this increase to 7.5, if we scale through, would this have any impact on individuals? Will it hurt the manufacturing or some segment of the economy in terms of what we call production and all of that? And looking at the power in the pocket.
Okay, I would say that the proposed tax had some leverages to weaken or reduce the effect on individuals. Like, for instance, the items that are excluded from VAT, like the food items, the basic ones that people need is excluded. And also, I know it would still trickle down to businesses, because building materials are not excluded, and that would trickle down to inflation, and it would affect even the poorest people at the end if there are no other policy measures to dampen the effect. But generally, the increment is required, although there are other ways the government can source revenues, like streamlining administration, streamlining what it pays to the senators so that people don't go there to retire, streamlining any repeated function, overlapping function of government agencies. There are other ways you can even source revenues, like running tourism. It's a good way many countries outside in Africa and other developed countries raise revenues for their government. It can promote tourism to allow tourists explore the beauties of our countries and in each state. It can formalize that. It can draw revenues from so many other ways. We know one of our biggest exports is Nollywood. If you go to any African country, that's almost all they know about Africa, about Nigeria. So we can promote such business ideas for the government to raise revenue aside VAT. So aside revenue, though the tax is required right now because we're running a deficit and the government would either have to borrow to make up, but there are other ways we can go about it, and ensuring accountability for each kobo of the new tax revenues in those sectors that have been mentioned would go a long way to making citizens and businesses more willing to pay. Yeah.
Of course, as much as the government needs to expand its VAT collection base for value-added tax, there's been this concern as to why businesses are not well captured with the threshold of VAT increase of, I think, raised about 25 million naira. I think you should throw more light on that.
Sorry, say that again. Say the question.
The 25 million naira turnover per annum on VAT increase.
Yes. Oh, okay, yeah. You know, when government manages our affairs, they make policies and regulation so as to better our affairs, whether in business or our livelihood. That's why it is our government. It is not a Buhari government or a Jonathan's government. No, it's a Nigerian government. Now, when you look at the structure of VAT, there are certain policies that government needs to put in place to promote businesses, to give businesses, because if you don't generate prosperity by way of allowing small and medium-scale businesses to thrive, you won't be able to tax them. And then the flip side of it is that you cannot be focused on tax increment on one hand, and then the other hand you are creating unemployment. You are killing businesses. So in other countries like in South Africa, in Ghana, where they have VAT taxation that is over 15%, they have thresholds. So this 25 million is a threshold that will allow, I even think that it should be upscaled. It should be upscaled to something like 40 million. It should be upscaled so as to give, that is the annual turnover of businesses at up to make the annual turnover of 25 million will not pay VAT. But you see, the funny side, the flip side of that also is that they are not paying VAT to the government at the demand side, but at the supply side, like she mentioned, they will still pay VAT. They don't pay. Their businesses don't pay. But whenever they purchase things that are taxable, VAT taxable, they will pay VAT on such products. I'd like to say here that I'd like to say here in response to my friend Obi, that You know, the federal government came up with, you know, I'm very critical of this government. Not critical, I just say exactly what I'm thinking. In 2017, they came up with what they call the tax amnesty. That is, the tax amnesty is for people to voluntary pay tax for undeclared assets for 12 months. Do you know the success rate of that policy in 2017? 8%.
Yeah.
Good. 8%. We just don't pay tax. He's talking about accountability, transparency, and the judicious use of public funds. I agree with you. But look at the figures. If we say that, how about using taxation? And this is just VAT. VAT is consumption tax. It's tax on flights, hotel rooms, and stuff like this. It's luxurious items.
So not everyone will pay.
Not everyone, certainly. The one that even bothers me is the electricity tariff, which I had mentioned before. I'm saying that that we have a mentality of thinking that government is a foreign body, something extraterrestrial outside of us. Maybe taxation is what will wake up this sleeping giant. And you look at those your governors on what? 15, 20 SUVs, all those number of securities, those lavish lifestyle of political leaders and top government functionaries, directors, permanent secretaries. Then you start to question and say, hey, you cannot do this with my money. Now we have this thing in the economy is called the Dutch disease. So where the money is coming to fund government budget, you are not bothered about it because there's oil revenues. You keep shouting, Nigeria is rich. Nigeria is not rich at all. Not by any strand of imagination. We are not rich at all. The rich thing that Nigeria has is its human resource. If you are looking at the mineral resource, Nigeria is a very poor country. Look at our budget. The value of our budget is $22 billion US. Go to other countries, similar countries, and you see that their budget is over $60 billion, $70 billion. Look at the structure of the budget. You use 70% for recurrent expenditure to run government. How can you generate development like that? I'm saying that government, the conversation right here is government needs more revenues. Yes, we need to get government accountable. Maybe by the time these 65 million working Nigerians start paying taxes, truly paying taxes, will hold government accountable.
Well, so how would you react to those who say that the VAT needs to go up if the government must fulfill its promise of paying the 30,000 naira minimum wage to workers?
Well, I think that's also where I blame this government for not communicating effectively. You know, there's a difference between giving information and communicating. I think that if you look at the figures, the total tax VAT collected in 2018 was just about 1.1 trillion naira. The total tax is about 5 trillion. The total VAT collected is 1.1 trillion naira. That's VAT. If you do the maths, of course, we know that 60%, 65% go to state government, 35 to local government, 15 to the federal government. If you do the maths, that figure, you divide that by the 36 states, you just find out that increment is a little, from my calculation, is just a 9% increment on, you know, on the 5% that they used to collect. So I think that it is not about, yes, the states are poorly managed, and he's right. I mean, I did some work in Benue. You find out that even though the government in Benue have corrected that, they have tax consultants. They give people the role to collect taxes, so-called tax consultants on behalf of the government, and it's mostly a job for the boys, political cronies and stuff like that, and they don't even give them targets. So it is what they declare that they remit to the government. They collect 100 naira, they declare that they collected 2 naira.
That means you are agreeing to what he said about probably some of these governors using even this tax as some form of payback, or, you know, like he said, to friends, it's a settlement sort of.
It is for the citizens of the state to stand up and challenge it. It is our government. It is not the governor. You are saying that he's a big man. He's not a big man. He's a public servant. We should attack. We should speak up. Those of us that have the opportunity to engage people officials in government, we should speak up to say no to this kind of things. Even at the local government level, we should do the same thing. But if we keep staying aloof and then complaining, I think that the conversations that we are supposed to be having is, what are we going to do with it? Not what are the solutions to it? Not sitting on the sidelines and complaining. I'm 46 years old. I'm tired of complaining. I'm getting to the field and say, look, you cannot do this. We have to change the way the structure of government is. If it is restructuring, let us restructure. If it is better for accountability and transparency, let us do that. If it is government needs more revenue, let us have the conversation of how government is going to generate more revenues, because we need more revenues to do capital projects.
Now, talking about revenue pressures, you know, the government is seeking to achieve a 7% increase, you know, in federal government revenue, and the issue of this VAT, even though it hasn't come in, is going to form part of, you know, the 2020 budget. Now, because it's still debatable, the president has actually put forward, you know, a finance, you know, bill to support this. If it doesn't scale through, how does that affect us? If we probably, when we, like he said, let's talk or let's discuss. If you know, probably after meetings and all of those, the VAT as it is now doesn't move. Maybe at the end of the day, because of the hue and cry, you know, it's left at 5%. Where does that leave, you know, the issue of revenue? We'll have to look elsewhere.
Well, Nigeria would be in trouble because of the deficit we are running, but it could drive the government to look for more innovative ways to fund the budget that they've made for 2020. They would have to fund it either by borrowing. They're already prospect to do some innovative borrowings like the Sukuk bonds, the green bonds, to raise up revenues, but that would mean that further in the subsequent year, they would have to spend a lot of money still servicing that debt. Right now, our debt servicing is the second largest, about over 20-something% that we have to pay up every year. And capital expenditure is like the least, just below recurrent expenditure. We know it's 47, and that's why it's very important to streamline the government sectors and agencies, the MDAs, to make sure that there are no overlapping functions, and streamline the amount we would spend in paying up salaries and all. So, yeah, that's basically that. Yeah.
All right, VAT increase. Not too bad a policy of the government, most pundits would say. But then, there seem to be too many avenues for taxation. And a lot of people wonder how timely this would be. In 2020, we expect the reopening or reintroduction of toll gates. That's a form of taxation. We are seeing that of the CBN policy, which began, I think, in September, on corporates and individual accounts, 3%, 5%, and that has left so much questions yet unanswered.
Thank you very much. In fact, in fairness, we are worried as an organization because we are confronted with stark naked wretchedness in the society. The citizenry are not happy with the workings of the government to a very large extent. And even the political class, they know what we're talking about. Many of them no longer answer phone calls. Because when you're talking about 20% underemployed Nigerians, 20%, you see graduates doing work of a cleaner in a hotel. It's as bad as that. Now you're not talking about, you know, even the World Bank and IMF have not even gone further to give us statistics of corporate beggars in Nigeria. Because we still have corporate beggars. Go all over National Assembly, go to some shopping malls. You see a well-dressed young man, a woman carrying children, begging for cash handout. So it's very terrible. I must tell you this. FIRS is one government agency that I will always say, in all our programs, I normally canvass that Nigerians should partner with FIRS. They are our friend. But don't forget, there is no tax culture in Nigeria. Well agreed. Okay, the over 19 million Nigerians that have been paying their tax, that paid their tax the last time, we expect the reflection of those tax paid. That is the truth. That is one hand. Another position is very, very simple. government should always understand. In our meeting with the FIRS chairman sometime last year, as an organization, we had a very healthy heart-to-heart discussion on how to bring in the informal sector into the tax net. You know, it's massive, it's huge. We intend to embark on advocacy, town hall meeting, bringing all the stakeholders and all that. It's very huge. But we are laying serious emphasis on cleanup here. Let us first of all do cleanup. Let us do cleanup in order to complement the effort of FIRS in getting this money. Because faceless Nigerians are willing to come on board to pay more tax.
When you say cleanup,
no, what we mean by cleanup is we are still emphasizing that these monies are not properly accounted for.
So who should be blamed for that?
No, government. And not the citizenry. Government should be accounted for. And another problem we face is substandard projects. How can a human being, do you know in the days of late Sam Mbakwe of 1970-something government, some of those roads, if you go to the east, some of those roads are still motorable. The roads that are constructed over 40 years ago. And the governor will just emerge. Within the period of 8 years, the whole road is unpassable. And that person will not come out and tell you that is a stakeholder in Nigeria. So we need to reject the system. Some people should go into the gallows. Somebody must answer for this question. And you see, the truth of the matter is that Nigerians are very understandable kind of people. There is no proposal. If we're talking about countries that are paying higher VAT, let us also remember that some people don't pay anything. Countries like Iraq don't pay anything. Saudi Arabia, Oman is zero.
Oil rich states.
Yes, oil rich. But they manage their destiny very well. But the destinies of the people of this generation, our destinies, somebody should preserve it very, very well. You see, our faith is hanging in balance. And that is just my problem.
Perhaps the reason why the government wants to go away from over-reliance on oil to, other sectors.
No. That is more reason why government is going to. But we also want government to consider, because many a times we listen to government talk about locking up loopholes. But how practical are they doing them? That is our concern.
Now, talking about the practicability here now, apart from the fact that there will be an increase in value-added tax, there's been this concern whether or not we are currently experiencing multiple taxation. Like I earlier talked about the recent policies of the CBN government on corporate and individual accounts.
God bless you for also coming up from that other area. Let me tell you, when you talk about multiple taxation, our organization have a blueprint on how to engage some relevant stakeholders. Nigerians pay through their nose. Just one small shop in Wuse Market. Go there as an investigative journalist. Go there and ascertain how many levies that just that one man pay in that shop. And you still generate power. Now, have you also gone further to check how much it takes even governors to power government house? If they tell you how much it takes them to power government house, you will shout. And Nigerian system, the overpadding is allowed. So the budget for powering government house alone is nothing to write home about. So when you talk about private business, when we're talking about this VAT, don't forget, people buy light in Nigeria, and it costs a lot. If you run offices in Nigeria, no matter when people say the person is a senior citizen, is no longer below the middle class or whatever, even the rich is crying in the system. People are bearing the brunt. It's not an easy thing. But let me say this. Whatever we are doing, we still believe that this system can be galvanized. but there is need for self-discipline. There is need for right approach. And there is also need for political will to come in place here. Let me say this. I must commend this government. I must commend this government. Because we must be fair in anything we will say. I must commend this government for strengthening NFIU to assist ensuring proper financial autonomy in local government. If only our governors will allow it to fly. Because it's also another big problem. It's a very good way to go. Because life is local. Now let me say this. If you look at our economy, you will understand that manufacturing is facing a lot of problem because of issue of no power. If you look at our economy, because of social unrest, Boko Haram issues, insurgency, the area of, Northeast, farmers can no longer go for business. So the rural poor is suffering there. And when you come to Abuja, if you come to the urban distance, the urban poor is also suffering because many people cannot even buy food. It's as bad as that. Go to restaurant. Some persons cannot even afford 500 naira a plate of food. So that is where we want people to understand that government need to wear human face. So now, for us to get a better solution to this problem, government need to instill proper public financial management. There is need for that.
Okay, talking about financial management, she's raised the issue of some of these bank charges also. Adakole, we also know that there is the stamp duty, and that's another way of collection. And I think I attended a forum of tax experts where they even said that the stamp duties currently, as it is, 15 naira on transactions in banks. You see, you pay money to someone, 15 naira is out. It's even the accountability aspect of it. Now we're talking about financial management. Maybe these are the reasons why this VAT, there is so much, like why what the other funds we collect and all. And there's even still the issue of how the management of the stamp duty itself, because the FRS is there, the NIPOS issue is there. So financial management and this, some of these funds or revenues already raised before now.
Well, thank you. I like the question that she asked about the cash handling charges and deposit charges by banks. What is it, 3% for private and 5% for corporate? And then the one you asked on about, those are not taxes anyways. Those are
you're talking about revenue generation also.
Yes, those are revenue collected by banks. I think that the banking sector in Nigeria needs to be cleaned up. I think that the CBN shouldn't be run by an ex-banker. What the CBN is doing or has done in the last 5 years is essentially to provide platforms to make money for the banks, for the commercial banks. I honestly think that. I think that the structure of the Central Bank of Nigeria should be reorganized. I don't agree that all the deputy governors, the CBN governor, the permanent secretary minister of finance, the director of planning should all be part of the MPR. I think that there's no way a deputy CBN governor can say no to the CBN governor in determining cash reserve ratios, bank and stuff like that, interest rates. I think it should be expanded for better policy formulation. They should include private sector individuals, people from the academia, from the ivory tower, to structure it so that we have a balance, people that understand how an economy is run. Now, that being said, I think that the extortion by commercial banks is something that Nigerian citizens, we should go beyond speaking out, but actually engage the National Assembly. I think we should engage the National Assembly, we should go for public hearing and unearth these issues of on healthy deductions, on deductions from transfers, wire transfers, from ATM maintenance deduction and stuff like. I think that they are extorting Nigerians, and these are not taxes. These revenues don't go to the government; they go to the banks themselves. I think that we must put an end to the inappropriate financial transactions that we have in our economy. Now, talking about bank handling charges, I think that we do things sometimes like people who are not knowledgeable enough to manage certain things. Yes, I agree with a cashless society. That policy is meant to promote a cashless system. But you look at a policy does not exist outside the culture of a people. And when I'm talking culture, I'm not talking about singing and dancing and wearing traditional attire. I'm talking about behavior, the way people behave every day and engage society. Culture of a people. You cannot place a policy and not watching the cultural idiosyncrasies of a people. Nigeria will essentially run a cash economy, because even if you want to do transfers, e-transfers, our network systems are weak. Sometimes those transfers don't even go. When they don't even go, sometimes the reversal is not even done in 24 hours. Now take a look at the statistics in 2017. Nigeria has less than 20 million, about 18,000 ATMs, and about 253,000 POS machines. That's in 2017. You have a huge population that live in urban centers, that the World Bank is estimating to about 110 million Nigerians live in urban centers that will need these services. And you have just about 253,000 POS machines. And you are saying that people should not handle cash. I think that the CBN should have gotten the banks.
You sure the numbers haven't increased now?
Well, the MBS haven't given us that figure. I won't say figures that they haven't given us. But you look at what is available. Economics is not something that you sit there I usually quarrel with the economy managers of this administration of engaging what we call primitive economics. That is preferring solutions and policies that are not based on empirical data or economic projections. You look at the data. I'm saying that why don't you grow the infrastructure first of e-money, e-transactions and all of that, increase the number of POS, increase the number of ATMs. Look, when you go to some states, you're asking me if it hasn't increased. Don't you see queues, people queuing on ATMs? That is because the infrastructure is poor. So I'm saying that yes, while we agree with a cashless system, because it's better to create a digital footprint that we can manage illicit from financial transactions, I'm saying that we need to grow the infrastructure first before you start punishing Nigerians for depositing or withdrawing cash. That's what I'm saying. And let's, like I usually say, let's not fight about it. Let's just have the conversation. So if this is the case, then why would you punish a Nigerian for depositing or withdrawing cash if the infrastructure is not available?
Precious, do you agree with him?
Yeah, he made a lot of sense in what he said about building the infrastructures first before engaging in a policy. Else the people, the users would suffer it. He's absolutely right in the need. He mentioned the figures on the ATMs and the queues that you see when you go to withdraw, and the fact that a huge percentage of the population is poor. Like Nigeria was called the poverty capital, and some of them wouldn't have access to some of these transfers or online banking. So cash is still really important for many businesses, small scale businesses, to run and operate. And so there needs to be infrastructures to support the cashless societies. Otherwise the people will just be paying off their noses for these services.
All right, as we hammer on VAT increase vis-a-vis the new minimum wage implementation, let's look at the state level. Yesterday, the Nigerian Governors Forum said that the federal government will not dictate to them as to how they would implement the consequential adjustment approved by the federal government and as well as Labour. Would you agree with them? Because a lot of people would say all fingers are not equal. While some states can do, maybe 30,000, some states would find it really difficult, paying such an amount, and perhaps the end product of this is double taxation for workers.
So for them to meet up this new minimum wage, it still boils down on revenue generating agencies to be able to meet up to their targets. since 2015, revenue generating agencies have been falling short by 45%. They've been falling short of their revenues. So if it's all boils down to, even within state, both at the national and the state level, they need to improve the way the revenue generation for them to meet up these taxes. But in the budget, it's already been stated that the increase in the recurrent expenditure, it's to take care of this minimum wage and to also take care of police and armed forces welfare. So it's already been included in the budget, and it's now boils down to the revenue bodies to be able to bring more people into the tax nets and collect what is required, and also for them to develop new methods or innovative ways of sourcing funds aside taxing the people who are already going through a lot. They need to go exploit or deploy their tourism. They need to deploy their comparative advantage. They need to find it and deploy it to raise revenues for the states and take care of the people.
All right, Okafor, you are the president of the Taxpayers Association. What would be your take on the call of some state government that they need to show up tax in their own state in order to meet the minimum wage?
I think in the first place, this is a very big challenge that we are faced with this in the recent Nigeria. All of a sudden, we woke up in this country and we started hearing salary and the arrears. It was not so before. And what it simply means is that, let me also say this. It's very, very understandable that salary ordinarily is supposed to be given. Salaries are supposed to be given because they collect. They're supposed to pay salaries. So you're not supposed to source for money to pay for salary. But the truth of the matter is that, let me tell us that some of our governors are very bad managers. And you know, how can you entrust an economy of over 500 billion in the hand of somebody that cannot manage it? Is a problem. Some government houses in Nigeria today is a collateral to banks. As you're looking at the government house, is a collateral to bank. Government have overstretched their bound financially. That even at times, when there is a very good lucrative investor that would demand for maybe an equity participation, you discover that the governor cannot be able to do much. Now, what we're saying in essence is something that worries us. Power belongs to the people. It is a very unhealthy situation that governors will look at the citizenry of the state and say, I cannot pay you your salary.
What is your group doing? You talk about FRS,
yes,
you know a lot. What about the state inland revenue? What is your body doing in states? Because you have members. So have to change this.
I'm coming. You see, our major challenge is that some of these governors have unabated penchant for corruption. Before you tell somebody, I don't have money to give to you, somebody must look at you and know that this man really doesn't have this money. Now, it is well known to every one of us that these governors have taken the citizens for granted for no reason. For number one, for the president of this country to have called them, asking them to align to do the needful, is a very clear indication that it's not a rocket science. They can do it. Now let me digress a little bit.
Yeah, because of time, you need to
okay, because of time. Let me digress a little bit. This stamp duty we are talking about, this money goes to central bank, right?
Yeah.
And it forms part of the government revenue. Let me tell you, if you go to revenue mobilization, you will get a lot of shocking revelations. We are doing a lot of underground job concerning this very particular subject matter. The Nigerian banks are pocketing so much. They have buried so many destinies in Nigeria. That money alone, if properly accounted for, runs in trillions. You know the kind of transaction Nigerians do on daily basis. And somebody will sit down somewhere as a bank MD and decide to pocket the destinies of people.
Perhaps the reason why my colleague asked you earlier what your association
we are
is
doing a lot, but in no distant time, we have done a lot of research. And we, look, I will say Nigerians should wait and see what this organization is doing. You know, people will be very, very home and dry with our activity at the end of the day.
All right.
Because we can assure them that we will not let them down.
All right. A lot of Nigerians will be looking forward to what your organization is doing as regards taxation in the country. Of course, this is an ongoing conversation. President of the Taxpayers Association of Nigeria, Okafor Obinna Innocent, joins us, and research fellow of the Center for the Study of Economics of Africa, Precious Chukwuemele Akanono. You're welcome. Thank you very much for being a part of this conversation. And of course, a political economist, Adakole Ijoji. Always a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.